In response to the continued civil unrest across the country, Virginia's capital is cracking down on gun control. The city council unanimously passed the ordinance which limits the possession or carrying of a firearm in a public space during an event.
All city councilors voted in favor for Mayor LeVar Stoney's proposed amendment to a gun control measure.
I had roughly 200 emails, about 170 from people supporting this legislation and asking that I do so.
The ordinance, which was introduced in August, will prohibit guns near or adjacent to protests or demonstrations that require a permit from the city. Richmond Police Chief Gerald Smith says RPD intends to use this ordinance to help make the city safer without restricting rights. But while the legislation does specifically exempt military personnel who are performing their duties, law enforcement officers, or security guards contracted by the city, Chief Gerald Smith says the law could also exempt private citizens.
The actual language of the law does not offer an exemption. So if I'm stepping out onto the sidewalk to get in my car, I potentially am in violation of that rule if there's a protest adjacent to the public right-of-way.
Now, city officials likely passed this to help protect their residents and possibly prevent shootings like we saw in Kenosha. However, in a chaotic and potentially violent situations like we've seen during these riots, a good guy with a gun might actually be beneficial. Join me now from West Bend, Wisconsin, president and founder of the United States Concealed Carry Association, Tim Schmidt. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Stephanie, it's great to be here. You know, I have to tell you, hearing these legislators pass these laws, I mean, it's the same tired drudge over and over, and they're going to do absolutely nothing. The only thing that's going to happen is that good law-abiding citizens are not going to be able to protect themselves.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. I would say in this case, and Americans across this country know right now we can't fully depend on our police departments because they're overwhelmed. And then you're not allowed to protect your businesses. They don't want you to have guns. I mean, it just sounds like a terrible idea because we know all of the bad guys are still going to be armed or have whatever weapons with them, and they don't care.
Yeah, Stephanie, you're exactly right. I have to tell you, when the Kenosha riots happened, that really hit home for me. It's so close to our headquarters here in West Bend, Wisconsin. And I think what's happening all across the country is that many Americans are having the same feeling that, my goodness, this could happen in my town. And that's why we see millions and millions. Actually, I believe, Stephanie, it's over 5 million new gun owners all across the country just in the last few months. And I have to admit, part of me gets excited about that, but another part of me gets a little bit nervous because just by owning a gun doesn't make you proficient with it. You need to have good training. You need to have good education, so you know what you can and what you can't do with that gun. And that's what U.S. Concealed Carry is all about. We're here to create responsible firearms owners.
Yeah, and as you said, there's been an increase in sales in guns and ammunition. And part of the reason, too, was coronavirus. Like, no one knew what was going to happen with the economy. And, you know, when things go bad, things can get pretty dangerous in your community.
Yeah, I remember. So it was like the middle of March when the coronavirus thing started to kick off. And we instantly saw a spike of about 30% on a daily basis of new members. And it was exactly for what you said. People were just uncertain. And uncertainty leads to fear. And quite frankly, when you're fearful, you think about, hey, I need to protect my family, I need to protect my loved ones, and I'll say to all of your viewers and your Twitter followers, you know, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, but everybody wants safety and security for their families. And I'll tell you what, if you're one of those people that just bought a firearm, you need to get some education and training. You need to make sure you know what to do.
Absolutely. And since you brought that up, we have video, a throwback of the couple from St. Louis who obviously were charged for trying to protect their home. And you can give us your opinion on how they did that. But let's listen to what they had to say. Roll tape.
It seems as if the Democrats no longer view the government's job as protecting honest citizens from criminals, but rather protecting criminals from honest citizens. Not a single person in the out-of-control mob you saw at our house was charged with a crime. But you know who was? We were. They've actually charged us with felonies for daring to defend our home.
So what did you make of the video and what we saw originally, not just in this clip?
Of course. So some of the video clips I've seen, certainly the two folks probably could have used some better firearms handling training. I'll certainly admit that. But the bottom line is that free people should be able to defend themselves. As for the exact situation, were they in fear for their life? Because you can only use a gun to defend yourself when you're in fear of grave bodily harm or losing your life. I'm not sure exactly where they were at on that continuum, but it's important that all gun owners understand that continuum and know when to make that decision.
Yeah, my understanding was that they felt threatened and they had heard things and they thought this mob was going to burn down their house or break in and loot, especially based on all the images and videos we've seen over the past couple months.
Yeah, and so to that point, I mean, at the end of the day, did they break in and loot their house? No, they didn't, because they were afraid of getting shot.
Exactly. And we see this trend here where law-abiding citizens or not necessarily law-abiding, but like the looters and the rioters are not getting in trouble. And so this couple gets in trouble, but no one in the mob there was charged. Like nothing happened to them.
Absolutely crazy, and to me, that this signifies, a sign of the times. It makes me nervous about the future of our country. I mean, if this truly is what's going to happen, if just because you own a gun, just because you're a law-abiding citizen with a gun, you're not going to get the same protective rights as these mobs who are representing, maybe something that's politically correct. That makes no sense to me. I don't like it.
Yeah, and what Democrats are trying to pull these days, I mean, there's just a lot of things that would encourage maybe people who were afraid of owning a gun or didn't really value our Second Amendment rights. But aside from the riots and the looting and everything, we have an effort across the country and different cities and different states to defund police. And what does that mean? It means you're kind of out on your own. Then we saw several jails across the country release dangerous inmates due to coronavirus because they were worried about the spread of coronavirus in jail. I interviewed a woman who told me that her brother's murderer was released in California.
Gosh, that just literally makes my blood boil. Stephanie, what I'm seeing, though, is that there is an awakening giant across this country, and it's the people that, for the most part, they go do their jobs, they take care of their family, they live their life day to day. And these are the people that are realizing that you're right, they need to be their family's first line of defense. They need to be able to provide that protection. And I think we're going to see a change in the tide. I think we're going to see more responsibly armed citizens being forced to use their guns. I hope that doesn't happen. But in a free country, that's the way it works.
Yeah, and this effort to defund police, like we've seen the results in several cities, including New York City, which I believe there's a crime surge up like 166%. And so New York City doesn't have great gun laws.
Yeah, no kidding. To me, it's amazing to me that people are actually surprised that when we defund police and we put police in a position where they can't protect us, that crime rises. Well, of course crime is going to rise because, like you said before, Stephanie, the bad guys are always going to have guns, and the only people that follow the gun laws are the good guys. I mean, it's a very simple equation, and it makes complete sense to me.
Have you had a chance to examine where Biden stands on the Second Amendment? Like I said, he's been kind of going back and forth. We don't really know what he stands for, but especially in these times, I think, as I mentioned, a lot of people have a reason to go out and purchase a firearm.
So from my perspective, Biden is not a friend of the Second Amendment. He is not a friend of the natural-born right to self-protection. He is not a friend of firearms freedom. I mean, there was a news clip where Biden got caught on camera telling an auto worker in Detroit that he was going to take away his, I think he called it an AR-16 or something. He misnamed the gun, but he was going to take it away. So no, Biden is not a friend of firearms owners, and thank goodness President Trump is.
Yeah, I didn't see that clip. I'm going to have to go look for it. That's absurd. Well, anyways, we're going to have to leave it here, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Coming up next, grabbing a bite in the Big Apple. Restaurants in